Okay guys, so I wanted to film today and share with you a reverse dieting case study. I've put up quite a few examples of this on my Instagram, but I have fewer that are actually available for you to see on YouTube. If you would like to see previous case studies, just look up my name, Reverse Dieting Case Study, and you should see those that are available. So this week's reverse diet case study is on a client of mine. She is more than happy for me to share her information with you. Her name is Therese Marquette. So I just want to bring up some photos so that you can see firstly who she is. So the photos that I'm going to show you are actually from 2014, 2015, and then 2016. So Therese has quite the background. She's done dancing, she's done every single sport you can imagine. I think she even plays the spoons. She's done everything. I just met with her on the weekend actually up in Chicago for Lane's powerlifting nationals, and we got to have a really good chat. So this girl's done it all, and she's also dabbled in a little bit of the physique sport, and she recently came to me in 2019 to seek help with her nutrition. So without further ado, in correct order, so the first photo that you can see here is of Therese back in 2014. Now this was her very first competition. So she's competing in figure here, I believe. So there she is, voila. Here's another image of her at that same competition. You can see that she has gotten quite lean. She doesn't have a huge amount of muscle mass. It is her first year, and I believe she hadn't really been lifting weights for very long at this point. And she explained to me that around this time, she was on incredibly low calories. So we're looking at sub 1,000 just to get her into this kind of condition, I guess, for her show. We then have a look at her 2015 shows. So she's still very, very thin, very lean. She's had very little time to kind of recover from the last diet, so she tells me. So again, they had to really push her calories incredibly low. It was all very strict. You need to eat this. There's no macronutrients listed. It's just specific foods and certain amounts that she had to eat. There was no questions asked. So she did it really, really tough. I guess I would call this bro dieting, where you're kind of following a structured meal plan and you're not given any flexibility, and you're provided with a list of foods that you have to eat, and there are no exceptions to that. So those photos were from 2015. We then look at her 2016 show. So she did take a little bit of time off, I believe, here, and you can see she has put on a small amount of muscle, but this would be just from, newbie gains, I suppose. She's still really new, but she certainly wasn't eating in a huge surplus at this point. So she's managed to put on some muscle, but she's still very thin. And then here's another one of her side-ons. So I'm trying to paint the picture for what life has been like, I guess, for the last, 2014, 15, 16 for Therese. The next images that I'm going to show you are from this year, so when Therese actually started with me. So we're looking at a very short, 2-year break, so 2017, 2018. And during that time, Therese kind of explains that she didn't really take any time off training. She kept training consistently, and she didn't really go overboard with her dietary intakes. I have seen her past spreadsheets of the calorie targets that she was given, but she was also just given set meal plans. Again, there was no set outline for macronutrients, protein, carbs, fats, or anything like that. It was just eat these foods. The foods weren't terrible choices, but they weren't really giving her very much variety. So 2 years has passed, and this is Therese now. Or when she started with me. So that's a side-on photo of her. Oops, let me fast forwards, my apologies. And then a back-on photo. So you can see that she has gained a significant amount of body weight in that 2-year period. And Therese is hyper-focused, attention to every detail. You say jump, she says how high. She's that kind of client. She really puts in the effort. So when Therese said to me that she wasn't doing anything crazy with her dietary intakes and she didn't eat like an asshole, she was just returning to what she would consider to be kind of normal food intakes, this is the result. She also picked up CrossFit during that time. She was doing a little experimenting, I guess, with different types of exercise. And now she weighs in at 192 pounds when she started with me. Those stage weight photos that you were looking at, I think she said to me she was around the 115 pound weight range, if I'm correct. So, it's a lot of weight. And she just really wasn't sure what else she should do. Because she didn't want to have to go through that awful mindset and the rigorous, dieting protocols that she'd done in the past, because it just ruined her mentally and physically. She has all kinds of chronic health issues that she's kind of been dealing with over the last couple of years that have kind of stemmed from those dieting days. And these are all issues that we are kind of trying to get under control now. She battles with endometriosis. She has chronic IBS, amongst other things. I won't go into all of it because it's not so relevant for what I want to talk to you about today, but I just want you to understand that kind of weight increase happens all the time. And it's just from repeat bouts of dieting and just not giving your body enough time to repair, and just crazy workloads. So anyway, I said to Therese when she kind of started with me, well, what are your maintenance calories right now? And she reported somewhere around 18 or 1900 calories. So here's where I started her. Now this is I set these targets based off of the Mueller equation. I looked at her current body fat percentage, which I just use as an estimate, at 39%. And then that was able to, looking at her training volume, so I'll scroll across for you. You can see she was doing about 4 hours of lifting per week. She was doing 60 minutes of HIIT, and I believe that was from like a CrossFit type high intensity interval type training, and then she was doing just 90 minutes of steady state walking. So that was her activity. So those variables were all considered, which is how I came to this 1946 as her starting maintenance calories. So you can see here her compliance to her calories has been very good throughout the reverse diet period. Same for her protein. She's done a really excellent job, and I'll show you some more of the detailed logs that I record from my clients in a moment. But what I really wanted to point out here was what kind of has taken place with Therese's weight, but what has actually happened with her calories. So she started at 192, and by week 10, she actually had dropped down to 187. So it's interesting if we look at her calorie intakes. We started her at 1946, and I had increased her all the way up to 2335, but she actually lost weight. So there's a couple of things that may account for this kind of phenomenon. What I think is probably likely is that Therese's maintenance or reported maintenance calories were probably a little bit higher than she had been tracking. So perhaps she was, truth be told, maybe she was being consistent with her macro intakes 6 days of the week, and then maybe one day of the week she would go out and have a free meal where she didn't track, and the calorie content of that particular meal across the course of the day was much higher than the reported 18 or 1900 calories. So overall, that actually brings up her average calories. So it's likely that in these first initial few weeks, perhaps she was actually under eating and eating less than her current maintenance since she lost weight. But I think it's probably fair to say that by about this week 10, where her calories are stable at 2335, I think we're back in the ballpark for what's actually a true indicator of her maintenance. Now, at this point, I have just continued to increase her calories. So from week 10 right down to week 19, I've taken her from that 2300 up to 2690. Let's call it 2700 to round it off. And over those 10 weeks, she's hardly changed weight at all. In fact, she kind of stayed under her starting weight, which is 192, all the way up until week 19. So she was still weighing in less than when she started up until the 19th week. However, we are now eating some 700 calories more than what she started with, which is just excellent. So that's one aspect that I wanted to look at, which was the huge increase in energy intakes from start to finish. The other thing I wanted to point out is also activity. So there are multiple variables that make up our energy balance. One of those is, of course, our energy from food. And another of those variables is our exercise or our NEAT. So what I also want to point out here is that Therese is actually decreasing her energy expenditure and decreasing her exercise throughout the program. So whilst she started at 60 minutes of high intensity interval training and 90 minutes of LISS, by the end of that, she's actually dropped down to only 20 minutes of high intensity interval training. We also take a look at her LISS or her tracked steps, just using her Apple Watch. She was consistently she was consistently stepping or tracking about 12,000 steps in the early parts of this reverse diet. And we've got her all the way down to 7,000. So she's essentially halved the amount of activity that she was doing just from incidental stepping. And she has dropped her high intensity training by a third, which is also great. What we've also done is really tried to focus on her resistance training. So while she's in this calorie surplus, she's giving her body an opportunity to actually build and grow new muscle. So whilst there's no changes been happening that are super significant on the scales, particularly during these weeks here, there's very little happening with her weight, 187 up to 190, it's 3 pounds. What we will be seeing here is a drastic change in her body composition. So hopefully we're starting to see new muscle being built and a decrease in body fat. So the next lot of photos I just wanted to show you are the week 1 photos. So if you can have a look on the screen here, the image on the left that my mouse is kind of hovering on is her week 1. And this is her week 19. So like I said, she's halved the amount of steps that she's doing. She's made a significant divot in her high intensity interval training. She's dropped that down by a third, 2/3, and her calories have gone up 700 since starting. So if you take a look at her composition front on, she actually looks better. She's got better shape. Particularly through her legs here. She's definitely narrowed down and we can see some changes happening. I think the side photo is probably the photo that does us most justice here because you can really see what's going on. So if you take a look at Therese's side on, if you'll notice just the stomach area here, from week 0 through to week 19, there's a drastic difference. There's a lot of distension here, a lot of abdominal fat compared to now. You can see here at week 19, it's significantly less. And again, just reminding you that she's eating more and doing half the amount of activity that she was when she started. So this is all evidence of positive metabolic adaptation. So gradual increases in calories and a slow and gradual decrease in activity from cardio, we start to see adaptations taking place. So it's like the body finally relaxes. She's been through all of these really rigorous, really restrictive intakes during her competition days. where her body is, it's in self-defense mode. It's ramped up. It's trying to do everything it possibly can to stop fat loss from happening. And that carries on for quite some time. And in fact, you can tell now between the period of when she did her last show to when she started working with me, her body has done absolutely everything that it can to hold on to every, last calorie of energy that it comes across. It's, trying to conserve, every time she has a meal, it's doing its absolute best to conserve as much of it as it can, and hold on to that. So finally, we'll scroll down and you can see her refacing photos. You can see that she has significantly changed her shape through her glutes and just through the top of the hip area here. When she started, there is a little bit of adipose tissue that you can see here. And that is kind of really starting to reduce. You can see here at week 19 that those changes that are taking place. And Teresa's been working really hard with her training program. I believe it's a 5-day weight split. She's been working on a lot of mobility exercises and just kind of retraining her body to kind of move in the right pathways and the correct movement patterns. So that's where we are right now with Therese. She's done her 20 weeks of reverse dieting. She's got all the way up to 2,700 calories, which is excellent. So now the plan for the next 16 to 20 weeks will be dieting. I will be putting in some diet breaks for Therese, but they will probably only be put in if she feels that they are necessary from a psychological standpoint. I think that the diet breaks have some positive research findings and are of better value in really, really lean individuals, so far as helping to mitigate a decrease in your resting metabolic rate and to help minimize the amount of lean body mass loss. But that's a greater risk for people that are already very lean and don't have the caloric cushioning for their body to kind of tap into. So at the moment, Therese has a little bit of adipose tissue that can kind of support her training, whereas when she's leaner and there's less of that available, then the risk becomes greater for her body to start using her own skeletal muscle tissue protein as fuel. So I'm not going to put those in there early on in the program. It'll be later and as needed. So the goal would be to probably set her up at a rate of loss of, I think we're doing 0.4. I have to double check. I don't think this is accurate. However, if we do some quick math, let me just bring this up for you so you can see. So if Therese is at 192 right now and we were to target a 0.004 per week, that means every week we would be looking at 0.75 pounds of weight loss per week on those dieting weeks. So we'll probably, if we dieted her for 16 weeks, that would equate to 12 pounds of weight loss. So that's probably going to be broken up with a couple of those diet breaks, as I mentioned, but we will probably take that for the first phase of dieting. And just see where her calories get down to, because Therese isn't planning on competing again this year. I'm going to be stopping her when she gets to probably around 25 calories per kilogram of lean body mass. That's probably a really realistic amount of calories to stop somebody on who isn't competing. For those that are stepping on stage and they still have a little bit of body fat to lose, sometimes we'll push it a little more aggressively and take people down to say 22.5. So just to give you an idea, once again, I'll show you on the calculator. I'll use my own body mass as an example. Actually, we'll use Therese. So let's say she's at 192. Oops. And let's say her body fat percentage right now is sitting at 0.38. So that means she has 72 pounds of fat mass. So we'll go 192 minus 72. So Therese has 120 pounds of lean mass I'm going to divide that by 2.2046 to get it into kilos. So she has 54 kilograms of lean mass. And then times 22.5 is about the lowest I would want to take somebody who is competing. In some cases, it's a couple of calories lower, perhaps, if it's, someone's very close to being, right where they need to be. But that would mean we end Teresa's diet on 12.24. So once we start to kind of dabble around those kind of calorie intakes, that's going to be where we end her diet. Or if she feels that it's too difficult to kind of maintain and keep up her day job, we'll stop it or cease that diet earlier than that, potentially. So wherever she gets to, she'll have made, significant progress. I'm hoping that it'll be around that 12-pound mark. And then we'll do another reverse. We'll probably go through the same process. I think for someone like Therese, who's had such a large weight fluctuation, it's probably going to take a couple of attempts to get her back down to a lower body fat percentage, so in the low 20s or even the high teens. So maybe at the next phase that we diet, maybe she'll be starting from, say, 180 pounds, okay? And then at that diet, we aim to tackle another 15 pounds of weight loss. So, then she's getting down to the 165 mark, which is really starting to get her back into a really healthy body weight range and body fat percentage. Now, if we look at the timestamp for this, it's taken us 20 weeks to get her to where she is now. I'm just painting this out so that you understand about time and the need for patience when it comes to this reverse diet and diet cycle process that I like to use with clients. That's 20 weeks, and let's round up the next diet phase to 20 weeks. So we're at 40 already. Then for her second reverse diet, let's say she does another, 20 weeks. We're at 60 weeks. And then by the second diet phase, when she's down to 165, it'll be 80 weeks. So we're just encroaching over a year to achieve that kind of a weight loss. So I think sometimes people's expectations about what's realistic and what's actually likely to happen is drastically, misunderstood or just completely off the mark. So, in 80 weeks, Therese is going from 192 down to 165. So she's losing 30 pounds over, a significant time frame. And I think some people think that they can do that in a couple of months. And it would just not be feasible to do that. Looking at what we know as a safe calorie floor, you can only diet for so long until you kind of hit a plateau and you're not going to lose any more. We have people coming to us all the time saying, I'm stuck at X weight and I'm already eating, very little, and I'm training 6 days a week and I'm doing, 3 or 4 hours of cardio and nothing's happening. And the reality is they've just hit their calorie floor. They've hit a plateau and it's probably really friggin' hard. So in that situation, unless you're prepared to put your metabolic rate through hell and drop your calories even lower to really unsafe and unsustainable intakes or activity output, there isn't a lot else that you can do other than reverse diet. The problem most people fall into, or the trap most people fall into, is they'll push themselves so hard at the end of this diet phase that what they'll see is like their hunger hormones are so ramped up and they're driving them and they're driving you to eat. What happens is people end up just going, I can't do this anymore. And all of a sudden they just binge eat. They ate crazy amounts of calories, 2 or 3 times greater than what they'd been sticking to during the diet phase. And because their metabolism is very suppressed at that state, they just put all that weight back on like immediately. And they may end up like getting back to what the start of the diet weight was. So now you're at a position where you're back to your starting weight, but your metabolism's down here. So in order for you to drop weight, now you have to eat even less because you haven't caught up and your metabolism hasn't had time to adapt. So The trick is to make sure that when you start the reverse diet from the end of a really aggressive diet phase, that you do it super cautiously, be consistent, treat it like you would treat a diet, follow your targets, and you can get some really great progress, like you can see here with Therese. She started her reverse it's probably likely that we were a little lower than her actual maintenance at the start. But from, week 6 or 7 here, I'm pretty convinced that this was true calorie maintenance. And we've just been able to add calories, but she was super dead on. You can see how consistent she was with her targets. Here are all of her logs for every week. You can see 100% compliance, 100% compliance. She is just nailing those protein intakes consistently every single day. She's tracking. She's never missed a day. She's on point. It requires effort, but if you want good results, then this is the most accurate way to do things. You can intuitive eat. You could, do intermittent fasting. You could do time-restricted eating. You could do keto. But if you aren't tracking calories, then, you're just not going to be as accurate, and there's going to be room for error, and your actual intakes might exceed what you're meant to be eating at that particular time frame. So I'm a massive advocate for flexible dieting. You can see we have set targets each week, and the client is able to eat whatever they like that fits those targets. So, Teresa's got 245 grams of carbs that she's playing with here. I can tell you now, there's probably ice cream in here, there's probably popcorn, rice, pasta, bread, cereals. She's probably been out and had meals out. She does what she enjoys, provided she hits these macronutrient targets, because at the end of the day, fats are fats, carbs are carbs. Those calories are all going to add up to this total amount here. And at the end of the day, when it comes to maintaining your weight, or if you're trying to gain weight or lose weight, calorie balance and energy balance matters. And yes, fiber is important, micronutrients are important. It's not giving you the excuse to just go and eat whatever you want. And that's why I have my clients track their fiber intakes. We talk about the importance of micronutrients and whole foods that are, nutrient rich. Those things play a key role in how well our bodies function and how optimally they are going to work for us. So you can't just treat it like shit, but it's also saying that you can, if you want, have a little bit of flexibility to eat some foods that might help you stay on track for the rest of the week. If you can look forward to a small treat here or there, or a small treat once a day, and that helps you stay compliant for all the other days, so then include a treat. There's no reason why you can't try and work some of those foods that you really like into your macro targets. So that's all I have time for today. I just wanted to show you kind of how a reverse diet process would work with my own clients and how they track. I guess if you guys have any questions about the reverse diet process, please feel free to leave some comments below, ask me questions. I am just about to bring out a reverse diet guide, so stay tuned for that. Lane and I will probably be getting that off to the publishers at the end of November of 2019. So we're pretty pumped to have that available for you guys, because there isn't a whole lot of research available on the topic. So we've gone ahead and pulled everything we possibly can from the scientific literature, and we've also pulled about 100 case studies of our own clients that have undertaken a minimum of 10 weeks reverse dieting and that have been compliant to their calories. So we've got some really cool data to share with you. We've seen some very interesting trends, and what is most successful, what makes for a successful reverse diet. So stay tuned for the book. And again, if you have questions, feel free to leave those below.